Listen, I know I'm not crazy. Well, maybe a little bit, but I'm not crazy, bro. Full blown out crazy. I know I just heard parents recently just saying, hey, put that social media down. Go outside. Be a kid. You know what I mean? You got to take the kids off of this social media because it's people out here trying to be deceptive, trying to get to them, predatory behavior happening on these apps and stuff like that. I thought it was about protecting the children. Now, Australia has stepped in and said, no, there's a ban. There's a social media ban for anyone under the age of, I think, 16, right? And I think the parents have an issue is because it's the government dictating it and not them. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if they can do this, what will be next? So we got to talk about it and break it down. Let's go.
And Australia is now the first country in the world to ban children from social media. The law gives TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, X, Instagram, and others a year to get users under 16 off their platforms or face potential hefty fines. The Prime Minister says the law supports parents concerned by online harms to their children. Facebook and Instagram's parent company, Meta, said the legislation was rushed. Now the big question is how they will verify users' ages and whether other countries will follow suit.
See, that's what I'm saying. I thought it was about protecting the children, bro. Bump everything else. I'd rather have my child. I'd rather protect the innocence of my child as much as I possibly can. So y'all have to choose which one is it gonna be, man.
In 2009, a 17-year-old Australian boy committed suicide due to online bullying he was suffering on social media. This terrible news sent shockwave throughout the entire fiber of the Australian society. Fast forward to 2024, and now Australia recently passed a complete ban on social media for all kids under 16 years old. This initiative was supported by over 70% of all Australians. The Australian government argued that social media platforms are toxic, especially for kids, and are a breeding ground for fraud, identity theft, and online bullying. Any company that fails to enforce that law can be subject to over $30 million per fine. Banning kids from going onto social media may at first seem like a good thing, but it could also have unintended consequences. For example, kids might find an alternative, more toxic way of spending their time. Also,
that's with anything. You know what I mean? That's why, as a parent, you just got to try to be on top of them as much as you can. You got to try to pay attention to what they're doing, what they're into. Be invasive. You got to be. You got to be over their shoulder as much as they want their privacy. Oh, well, you get it when you move out. At least that's what my parents told me. You want privacy? You get it when you move out. Oh, you ready to go now? Because that's the only way you're getting your privacy. Like, where is that type of parenting that I got?
This may prevent a lot of kids that use social media in a good way and creative way from having access to the platform and meeting like-minded people. We still have to wait and see how the law is actually enforced in a practical way before coming down to a conclusion as to whether the law will have a positive or negative impact on the kids that it's meant to protect.
So Australia has introduced a bill that would ban kids from being on social media at the age of 16 and under. What do we think of this? Do you think it's going to work? Should America follow suit?
Will it work? Now we're asking the question, will it work? I mean, I'm willing to take a chance on it. You don't know until you try. I mean, weigh out the pros and cons. That's what you do. Write down the pros, write down the cons. And right now, protection, that would be at the top for me. So that pro would probably outweigh a lot of other cons. Sorry, if they got to go back to the old school way, then let them go back to the old school way. Go outside where I can see you, though.
I want to know what you think about the Australia ban on social media under age 16. While the majority of experts I talk to do agree and think this is important to help protect our teens, I do have some questions that have come up in my discussions with parents, such as Why age 16? Is that based on brain development research? 16 is the driving age in the United States, but that was set a long, long time ago before we even had all this brain development data. And looking at that data right now, it might even be age 18 if we had to reassess. That said, I'm so glad my older boys could drive when they were 16. It was hugely helpful. The other thing is, should government be legislating what really should be done by parents and taught in schools? So that's another factor we have to consider. Also,
there's the issue. Like I said before, I knew that was going to be brought up. That's the issue people have right there. And I understand that one right there, because once you open that door, it's going to be hard to close it. So I get that aspect of it.
So age 16 is also a challenging age to help teach your children how to navigate the world of social media. So I might propose having a year or two where parents can be on it with their kids, just like you drive with your kids, to help them learn what's appropriate, what you can say, what you can watch, and how to navigate this new life, because it's not going anywhere. And maybe some of the social media companies do need to be a little bit more responsible with their algorithms and the data and content that they are allowing younger people to view. So I'm curious, what are your opinions? Pros and cons. Let's start a discussion.
Well, here's another thing as well, right? These social media platforms allow, and I know y'all have seen it, kids who are not 18 to create an account and say they're 18 when you know clearly they're not 18. Like, we got to figure out a way, both on our side and both on their side. Like she said, they got to work on the algorithm and better ways of security. And we got to do a better job of monitoring our kids. You know what I mean? If you got to take the cell phone, take the cell phone. If you got to take the laptop, take the laptop. If you got to take whatever device, tablet, whatever it is that or more apps to be able to control what, like we have the app to where my son, it has to get approval before an app is allowed to be downloaded on his phone. You get what I'm saying? So more things like that probably would be helpful.
Australia is set to ban social media for teenagers. The government is planning to implement this before the end of the year, setting the minimum age between 14 and 16 years of age. They say that their goal is to get kids to spend less time on screens and more outside, whether it's on the footy field, in the swimming pool, or on a tennis court. What do you think about this new law?
The Human Rights Commissioner has slammed the social media ban, saying that it actually breaches international treaties that protect children, including their right to freedom of expression, to access information, to participate with their peers, and to take part in social and cultural life. So really big issues, but it happens alongside the threat right now to take the whole ban to the High Court for potentially breaching a part of the Australian Constitution, which is about freedom of expression in regards to politics and the government. So we have this thing in Australia where all of us, adults and children, should be able to freely talk about the government and politics. And for young people, most of this takes place on social media. So if we take away social media, are we taking away their opportunity to be able to do this? So massive, massive issues. I don't know why they weren't considered in the initial discussions about the social media ban. But what it might do is it might put then less emphasis on banning a particular age group and much more focus on the platforms themselves and making these places much safer, not just for children, but for us as well. And also a greater emphasis on education around social media and how to use it in ways that don't have a negative impact on us. So I think this is a really interesting move, but what do you think? The Human Rights Commissioner has slammed.
Setting a new national minimum age for social media will support parents and teachers. We all know that technology moves fast and some will try to find their ways around these laws, which is why we need to get it right.
Kids are too young to handle the algorithm of the power that we see tech giants use. It affects their brain development. It also hurts their focus.
The age of assurance trials at the moment are looking at between the ages of 13 and 16. Of course, we're going to consult around the specific age, but we know that's a particularly vulnerable age.
The reason that it's important that the age is 16 is we need to give kids the opportunity to mature before they're exposed to this, frankly, awful environment of social media.
All of the experts say this is not how you do it. The expertise and the evidence is that we have to make the social media companies responsible for making their platforms safer, for making them better, for making them responsible, not just blaming young people and kicking young people off social media.
No country.
Hey man, that sounds like soft parenting to me. You want them to do your job as parents? I mean, make it make sense to me, man. What do you want? I was told a long time ago, you're not supposed to be, you're supposed to be a parent, not your child's friend. And I know your child wants to be on social media so bad, but you also have a child that wants to drive so bad, right? But you can't let them drive earlier than they need to, right? So what are we saying here? Like, come on, man. Like, okay, we're the bad guys. It is what it is. Accept it. Except they're going to be upset with us because their other friends are on social media, or if they now that it's banned, they're not, but kids that are maybe a year older than them and they feel like they're mature than them. If you're mature, then you can wait. Show me your patience. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Now, should the platforms start? Yes, I've already said that. Their algorithms need to stop suggesting some of the things that they're suggesting. Agreed. You know what I mean? Do a lot better of identifying some of these things that are harmful to children. Absolutely. But if you think you're going to get them to get it 100% right, good luck.
Did you guys see that in Australia they've banned social media for minors under the age of 16? What do you guys think of that? Do you think that's overreach? Do you think that's just crazy? Or do you think that's actually smart? Like, do you think that social media is bad for people under the ages of 16? Do you think it's actually going to make people better? I mean, I never had social media under the age of 16 and I turned out okay, I guess. But I can't imagine what it would have been like in those days when there's distractions, there's girls, there's high school, there's puberty, there's all those things going on, and then there's social media on top of that. It would have been hard for me because I'm very easily distracted. I like shiny objects, and I would have been like, ooh, 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 and not taking anything really too seriously. So for me, it probably would be a good thing, but I want to know, what do you guys think? Do you think it's just crazy? Let me know.
Australia is making history with groundbreaking legislation. Anyone under 16 will soon be banned from accessing social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, X, and even Reddit. Although the law doesn't require users to upload government IDs, tech companies must enforce the restrictions or face fines of up to 50 million Australian dollars or 32.4 million US dollars. The changes are expected to take full effect within a year. This move comes amid growing concerns about social media and its impact on mental health for our youth. Studies show that young adults who use social media platforms are 3 times as likely to suffer from depression, which can increase the risk of suicide. Alarming statistics from CDC reveal that an 87% rise in suicide rates among females aged 15 to 24 and 30% increase amongst male over the past 2 decades have occurred. However, critics worry this ban can push children toward darker corners of the internet, much like the unintended consequences of alcohol prohibition in America in the 1920s and 30s. Yet, social media can be used for positive effects on areas such as education, innovation, learning, discovery. But what do you think? Should social media be banned for all children? Are we truly?
I think at that age 16 and under, they don't care about the positive sides of social media. Some do, and that's a small amount of kids that do. You know what I mean? Most of them are into all of the stuff that the adults are into. You know what I mean? Think about it. Imagine back when we were in school, right? And you didn't have social media. Whatever happened in school, it was there at school. And you had to face it when you came back to school. You know, you thought about it at home, how you could deal with it, whatever was going on with you, and you addressed it when you got back to school, but it stayed there. Unless it came home on the bus or, you know what I mean? But that's still a small group of people. Everything that happens in school for those kids now is now continuing on because it's all over social media. It's being talked about there when they get home, throughout the night, when they wake up the next morning, all the way to school, and now all day at school, and then it continues on. Like, it never stops. You had a break when you were going to school without social media or at some period in time to figure out how to deal with it or how to cope with it, or where you didn't have to face it for the moment and you can get yourself together. There's no downtime now for kids. It's a lot of pressure on these kids, i.e. why you see those alarming percentages of different things going on. One of them being depression. Like, it's so much of an effect that you don't even get a chance to, you know what I mean, understand what you're dealing with, this animal that you having to deal with called social media. You don't even get a chance to get your bearings about yourself before you're already in something. So, you know which way I'm already leading it. You know what I mean? Say what you want to say.
Really protecting our children. Is Australia heading in the right direction? Should we follow suit or do something a little bit different?
The Australian Senate has passed a social media ban for all children under 16.
This is insane. It should be 10 years old, which is the age of criminal responsibility here in Australia. Can't use TikTok, but you can fucking go to jail. Our country sucks.
The Australian Senate...
He said a lot there. He said a lot there. It should be 10 years old. I mean, I look at it like this, bro. They allow you to drive at like, what, 15, 16, 15, got to have a parent in the car. So this is kind of your introduction into adulthood right there. You're getting that responsibility, but you still got your parent in the car with you. You know what I mean? You want to give them social media, give it to them at 16 with a mirror image that your parents can see. Everything that you're doing and that you're on. You do that for about a year. And then after that, hey, bro, once you're out there and you're no longer a minor, you're an adult legally, then those decisions, just like everything else in your life, you got to make, and you got to suffer and live with the consequences. So
let me get this straight. A 14-year-old Australian is mature enough to go to prison, but is too young to use social media? Here's the tea on Australia's social media ban.
This one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
What this shows more than anything is pretty much generational divide.
Australia could become one of the first countries in the world to introduce a law banning children under 16 from using social media, citing concerns around exposure to harmful content, misinformation, bullying, and social pressure. But despite the social media ban push getting a wave of support, it stirred up some serious debate across the country.
Where there's a will, there's a way, and if kids want to post, kids will post. There'll be new sites popping up. It's demand supply. You see the kids of today saying, look, I'm under so much pressure, I just want to unwind, or this is how I keep in contact with my friends, please don't take it away from me. And while I don't disagree that social media can be a dangerous place and there needs to be regulations on social media, a flat-out ban is not the answer.
Today's teenager, they interact a lot less with their parents, and you see them, in their digital world, which makes it difficult for parents to understand what really is going through. Balance is where we're struggling, and that's where we need to get. In the last decade or so, we have seen a lot of positives come out of social media as well.
In October, the Australian Child Rights Task Force called the ban too blunt in an open letter to the government, urging them to instead focus on building safer access for young people rather than completely shutting them off. Experts around the country have weighed in.
What social media has done is that it's actually made our school communities toxic. We need to look really carefully at whatever this new regulation is. Very excited that we're going to have it, but we've got to keep our eyes on the ball.
A ban like this is just ineffective. What the government is proposing here, I can imagine technically it's something that would be very easily gotten around. What we're probably going to find is that those youth audiences will go elsewhere. They may find another platform, and it's going to be a game of whack-a-mole. And these platforms, let's be clear, these are not going to be the platforms that have representatives that government can talk to. These are going to be largely alternative platforms which don't really care, and that's a real risk.
And experts also say social media can be a vital resource for vulnerable young Australians.
What it does is actually potentially remove the only communication that some of these youth have in reaching out to support.
It really helps foster that kind of connectivity, that sense of community, even if you're not necessarily at each other's next door.
At this stage, the law would hold social media companies responsible for enforcing minimum age requirements. So what do you think? Is this social media ban a necessary shield, or is this a bit too restrictive for the voices of our young Australians?
So again, y'all basically saying what y'all upset about is the control, the government having control. And I'll be that as it may, I agree in that sense of them having control. But I'm sorry, this seems like same discussion, different topic. You know what I mean? Like, we had these discussions back in the day about whether or not people should be allowed to date at an early age. And then the conversation went from that to, well, kids are going to find a way, you know what I mean? Or whether you talk to them about sex ed or having sex, all that type of stuff like that. Well, kids are going to find a way. Hey, but as the parent, I have to do as much as I can to prevent it, right? So what are you saying right now? This is, as my job as a parent, is what I'm doing. And okay, let's just say, we're saying no social media. Y'all are saying, please give us an opportunity to have something. Okay, well, these apps right here aren't working, so come up with something. That's what my parents would say. Well, come up with something then. Come design a site, design a website. Let us look at it. Let us make sure, make it to where it's accessible by the parents. We see everything, but then you don't want that. You don't want us looking into what you're doing. Why is that? So I'm sorry. These are the same discussions and things we had back in the day, just different topics. And it is what it is. You're gonna have the ones that rebel and find a way, and you're gonna have the ones that say, okay, I'll wait. And usually the ones who rebel end up pregnant at 16, 14, 15. Now they got a rough life ahead of them. And the ones that chose to wait have an opportunity. I ain't saying they got they end up having in the best situation, but they're in a better predicament when they get ready to get out of high school. So I'm sorry, bro, but I don't see a way where this is making me change my stance right now, unless y'all come with a great argument.
Australia's government says that social media use for kids is bad for them, and they're looking at stopping them from using it. Australia's Prime Minister says that any kid 16 and under will not be allowed to use social media under the new law that they're proposing. And that means all kids. You can't be grandfathered in because you already have an account. If you're 16 and under, you will not be able to use social media under that law. So what happens if a kid or the parents let them use social media? Well, the Prime Minister says there won't be any penalties for the families, but there will be stiff penalties for the social media companies. What are your thoughts? Should teens be on social media? Should governments pass a law to prevent them from doing it? Let me know in the comments.
Lawmakers in Australia have approved a landmark ban on social media for children under the age of 16. Their goal is to diminish the impact of social media use on kids' physical and mental health. NBC News correspondent Liz Croyce explains.
Is passed resolved in the affirmative.
Australia taking an unprecedented step, becoming the first country in the world to ban the use of social media apps for anyone under the age of 16.
That's pretty huge, lady.
The landmark law, which overwhelmingly passed with bipartisan support, drawing immediate reaction globally on the very apps expected to be the target of it, including TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and X.
Do we all agree that this is good but bad at the same time?
Under the new law, tech companies will be required to take reasonable steps to verify a user's age and prohibit those under 16 from creating accounts, or else face millions in fines.
We have heard the cries of families who are suffering.
Lawmakers in Australia.
So the Labor government is backing a minimum age limit of 16 years to use social media after the LNP said that they would do the same thing. Now, I reckon this is an amazing idea. I'm a parent. I have a 7-year-old son. He obviously doesn't use social media at that age. And I've been grappling with the issue of, when is the right time for my son to start using things like Facebook? Snapchat, all the others, TikTok. 16 is a pretty decent age. Like, I feel like most kids would be mature enough to be able to, assess their relationships, to hopefully not be scammed, to hopefully not meet anyone that might be a predator, and to be able to assess whether someone is taking advantage of them. Below 16, not so confident. Would you leave your 14-year-old unsupervised in a bar? What about your 16-year-old? Now, I reckon most parents would say, yeah, I'd leave my 16-year-old unsupervised in a bar for a temporary period. Let's say you needed to go next door to the shops or what have you. So I think it makes sense. But is that going to stop parents taking photos and videos of their kids and putting them online? No, it's not. But at least it'll stop kids being able to directly use these platforms and communicate directly with people. So the parents will always be the conduit. But then, how the hell do you enforce a 16-year age limit? Are we going to have to submit copies of our ID to Facebook, to Meta, to all these companies?
See, that's my question right there. You know what I mean? Because people know how to just go create an account and say they're 18 or 16, knowing they're not. So it's kind of like the whole fake ID era from back in the day where kids were getting these fake IDs and going into these clubs and stuff like that. And these bars were struggling, trying to figure out, deciphering whether or not these IDs were real and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be one of their biggest problems right there. And them saying, hey, this person filled out and said they were, and the government saying, no, you need better ways of determining and detecting. And they're saying, how are we going to do that? So therein lies a real big problem there.
Under 14, you are a child. By the time you are 14 and 15, you're starting to become a bit more mature and capable of making your own decisions, and that's where we think parental consent comes in. So to be clear, if you're under 16, you won't be able to get access. If we're able to institute this reform, children under the age of 16 will not be able to get access to social media accounts. 14s and 15-year-olds will only be able to do it with parental consent. So we see that as being a natural graduated response. 16, I think that's the age that we allow children to get behind the wheel of a car. So there seems to be a bit of a synergy there.
So apparently Australia are banning social media for kids under 16. What a move, and a move they really have to bring here. This is not normal content, this is rant time. This is probably judgmental as well. But let's be honest, our kids, nobody who's sane can think that giving our kids access to this stuff is good for them. It just isn't. Their minds ain't ready for it. It's turning their minds to mush. They're not doing stuff they should be doing. They're ruining their development. It is madness. I'm not against iPads, not against social media. Used correctly, all that stuff is amazing. But giving our kids access to social media, these platforms, too young, is misusing it and doing them a disservice. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. I hope they bring the ban here sooner rather than later.